You're nothing but a disappointment, Sarah. Your brother deserves everything. Those words changed my life forever when I was 28 years old. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and this is the story of how I discovered my own mother cut me completely out of her will to give everything to my younger brother, and how I got the sweetest revenge she never saw coming. Growing up in Portland, Oregon, my brother Jake was always the golden boy in our house. He was 3 years younger than me, but from day one, everything he did was perfect in Mom's eyes. When he got C's on tests, she'd say at least he tried. When I got straight A's, she'd ask why I couldn't be valedictorian of the entire school. Throughout my childhood and teens, I worked twice as hard for her approval. I stayed up all night studying while Jake played video games. I worked part-time jobs in high school while Jake got an allowance for doing nothing. I was the first in our family to graduate college with honors, I might add, while Jake barely scraped through community college. After graduation, I landed an amazing job at a tech startup in Seattle. By 25, I was making 6 figures and had been promoted to senior developer. I bought my own condo, drove a nice car, and was completely financially independent. Jake? Well, Jake spent most of his 20s finding himself, which really meant living in Mom's basement, smoking weed, playing video games, and bouncing between dead-end jobs that lasted maybe 3 months each. But none of that mattered to her. In Mom's twisted mind, Jake was her precious baby who needed protection and nurturing, while I was the tough, cold daughter who could handle herself and didn't need love or support. The favoritism was so obvious it was painful. When Jake crashed, his car drunk driving at 23, Mom paid for a new one and made excuses about how boys will be boys. When I got a small scratch on my car in a parking lot, she lectured me about being more careful with my possessions. When Jake got arrested for possession, Mom hired the best lawyer in town and talked about how he was just going through a phase. When I forgot to call her back one day because I was in back-to-back meetings, she gave me the silent treatment for a week. The pattern continued for years. Every achievement I made was minimized. Every mistake Jake made was excused. It was exhausting. But I kept hoping that someday she'd see me for who I really was. My father was different. Dad appreciated my drive and ambition. He'd tell me how proud he was when I got promotions or bought my first place. But Dad got sick with lung cancer when I was 26, and everything changed. I spent every weekend for 2 years driving from Seattle to Portland to help with Dad's care. I researched treatment options, found the best doctors, and when insurance wouldn't cover experimental treatments, I paid out of my own pocket. We're talking about $30,000 of my own savings to give my father. A fighting chance. Jake? He visited maybe once a month, usually showing up high and asking Dad for money. When Dad finally passed away in late 2020, I was holding his hand. Jake was at home playing Call of Duty because he couldn't handle seeing Dad like that. At the funeral, people kept coming up to me, saying things like your father talked about you constantly, and he was so proud of everything you accomplished. Mom just stood there stone-faced, like she was annoyed that people weren't praising Jake instead. After Dad's death, I made even more effort with Mom. I called her every single day to check in. I drove down every other weekend to help with household, repairs, and maintenance. When she had a minor car accident, I took time off work to handle the insurance claims. When she needed new appliances, I researched the best deals and arranged delivery. Meanwhile, Jake continued living in her basement rent-free, contributing absolutely nothing to household expenses or upkeep. The bomb dropped on Christmas 2022. We were all gathered at the family house, the same beautiful Victorian 3-story that Dad had bought in 1985 for $180,000 and was now worth close to $1 million. Mom had made Jake's favorite dinner, prime rib, which she never made for me because I don't eat much red meat. We were sitting around the dining room table that I had refinished for her the previous summer. when Jake started talking about his latest business idea. "So I've been thinking," Jake said, cutting into his third helping of prime rib. "I want to open a tattoo studio downtown. I've got it all figured out." Of course, he didn't have any money, any artistic training, a business license, or even a single tattoo in his portfolio. But there was Mom, nodding along like he'd just announced he'd been accepted to Harvard. "That sounds wonderful, honey," she gushed. "You've always been so creative." Creative? The guy whose idea of art was doodling skulls on napkins? Yeah. But the thing is, Jake continued, "I'm gonna need some startup capital. Like, maybe 50 grand to get the equipment and rent a space." I nearly choked on my wine. $50,000 for this loser's fantasy business? That's when Mom dropped the bombshell that would change everything. "Actually, Jake, I have some wonderful news for you." She got up from the table and went to the living room, returning with a manila envelope. "I just finished updating my will with the lawyer last week." My stomach dropped. Something about her tone told me I wasn't going to like what came next. "I've decided that when I pass away, everything, the house, the savings accounts, the investments, all of it, will go to you, Jake. Sarah's already so successful and independent. She doesn't need my help. You're the one who'll need support to really thrive in life." The room went completely silent except for the sound of my heart pounding in my ears. I felt like I'd been physically slapped. The house was worth at least $800,000. Dad's life insurance had paid off most of the mortgage, and Mom had around $300. Zero in various savings and investment accounts. She was literally giving my brother over $1 million while cutting me out entirely. "Mom," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "are you serious right now?" "Of course I'm serious, Sarah. You make more money than Jake and I combined. You have your fancy condo and your career. Jake needs this more than you do. Besides, you've always been so independent and strong. You don't need your mother's help." Jake was sitting there with the biggest smirk on his face, like he'd just won the lottery. Which, I guess he had. "This is incredible, Mom. Thank you so much." He actually reached over and hugged her. "I promise I'll take great care of everything Dad built." I felt sick. Everything Dad built. Dad who had worked 60-hour weeks for 30 years to pay for that house. Dad who had specifically told me before he died that he wanted me to have his workshop tools because I was the only one who appreciated craftsmanship. "What about Dad's tools?" I asked quietly. He told me he wanted me to have those. Mom waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, Jake can decide what to do with those. It's his house, after all." That night, I drove back to Seattle in a blur of tears and rage. I couldn't sleep for 3 days. It wasn't just about the money, though $1 million inheritance would have been life-changing. It was the final, ultimate rejection from the woman who gave birth to me. I had spent my entire life trying to earn her love and approval. I'd been the perfect daughter, good grades, stable career, financial independence, taking care of both parents through illness. And in return, she had looked me in the eye and told me I wasn't worth a single dollar of her estate. But then, after about a week of wallowing, something shifted inside me. The sadness and hurt crystallized into cold, calculated anger. If Mom wanted to play favorites and make terrible decisions, fine. But actions have consequences, and she was about to learn that the hard way. I started doing research. Real estate research, financial research, legal research. I used my connections in Seattle's tech world, people who dealt with real estate investments and property management, to get the inside scoop on Mom's actual financial situation. What I discovered was fascinating. The house that Mom was so casually giving away to Jake, it wasn't actually paid off like I'd assumed. Dad's life insurance had covered most of the mortgage, but there was still about $200,000 owed. And Mom, living on just Social Security and a small pension, was struggling to make the monthly payments. In fact, she was 3 months behind on mortgage payments and had been getting threatening letters from the bank. She was also behind on property taxes and had racked up about $15,000 in credit card debt trying to maintain her lifestyle. My dear mother was basically house poor and heading toward financial disaster. But she was still planning to give everything to Jake. Jake, who had never paid a bill in his life and thought money grew on trees. That's when I had the most brilliant idea of my entire life. I had excellent credit, significant savings, and a high income. I also had connections at several banks through my work in fintech. So I made some calls and discovered that Mom's mortgage lender was actually eager to sell the debt to someone who could guarantee payments. In March 2023, I made them an offer they couldn't refuse. I bought my mother's entire mortgage debt for $180, zero, less than what was owed because I paid cash and they wanted the liability off their books. Just like that, I became my mother's landlord. She had no idea. I waited for 3 months. I waited while Mom continued missing payments, while the late fees piled up, while she probably stressed about money every single day. I wanted her to really feel the pressure before I made my move. In June, I sent the foreclosure notice. The phone rang at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. I was getting ready for work, drinking my coffee and checking emails when Mom's name popped up on my screen. Sarah. What the hell did you do? She was screaming so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. Good morning to you too, Mom. What's got you so upset this early? Don't play dumb with me. I got a letter yesterday saying the house is being foreclosed, and it says you own my mortgage. How is that even possible? I took a slow sip of my coffee. Oh, that. Yeah, that's correct. I purchased your mortgage debt from the bank about 3 months ago. And since you're now for months behind on payments, I'm exercising my legal right to foreclose on the property. The silence on the other end was deafening. I could practically hear her brain trying to process what I just said. You bought my house. Technically, I bought your debt. But since you can't pay it, yes, I'll be taking possession of the house soon. I'll need you to vacate the premises within 30 days, as required by Oregon state law. Then came the waterworks. Loud, dramatic sobbing that would have made a soap opera actress jealous. Sarah, please. This is my home. Your father and I built our whole life here. You can't do this to your own mother. I raised you. I gave birth to you. That's funny, Mom. Remember Christmas dinner when you said I was too independent and didn't need your help? Well, turns out you need mine. And unfortunately for you, I learned from the best when it comes to cutting family members out of important decisions. The sobbing got louder. What do you want from me? Money. I'll pay you back somehow. I'll get a job. What I want is very simple. I want you to understand what it feels like to be rejected and abandoned by your own family. I want you to know what it's like when someone you love looks you in the eye and tells you that you don't matter. Most importantly, I want you to learn that actions have consequences. She was crying so hard she could barely speak. Please, Sarah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just thought. You thought what? That you could treat me like garbage my entire life and I'd just take it? That you could give my inheritance to my deadbeat brother and I'd smile and say congratulations? Here's where the story gets even better. And this is the part that still makes me smile 2 years later. After I hung up on Mom's pathetic begging, she immediately called her golden boy Jake. She needed her precious son to step up and save the day, right? Wrong. Jake not only refused to help, he actually told Mom that maybe she should have thought about this before making stupid financial decisions. He said he couldn't risk his future inheritance on a house that was obviously a lost cause. The golden boy hung up on his own mother and blocked her number. When Mom called me back the next day, she was completely broken. Her voice was hoarse from crying, and she sounded like she'd aged 10 years overnight. Sarah, please. Jake won't help me. He said it's not his problem. I have nowhere to go. I don't have any money for a deposit on an apartment. I'm 67 years old. Please don't put me on the street. For the first time in my life, I had all the power in our relationship. It felt incredible. I'll tell you what, Mom, I'm feeling generous today. So here's my one and only offer. You can stay in the house as my tenant. Rent will be $2, $800 per month, which is actually $200 below market rate for a house this size. You'll also need to sign a new will that splits your remaining assets equally between Jake and me. And you'll sign a written apology for the way you've treated me my entire life. Take it or leave it. She took it. What choice did she have? But the story doesn't end there. 3 months later, in September, Jake showed up at the house with a U-Haul truck, expecting to move back into his basement paradise. He hadn't bothered to call ahead or ask permission. He just assumed he could waltz back into the free ride whenever he wanted. Mom had to explain to him that the house wasn't hers anymore. It was mine. And I had a very strict no deadbeat tenants policy. The look on Jake's face when reality hit him was absolutely priceless. This was the first time in his 29 years of life that his actions had real consequences. He tried calling me, of course. Left angry voicemails demanding I let him move back in. Sarah, come on. We're family. Mom promised me that house. You can't just steal it from me. I called him back just to hear him squirm. Hey, Jake. Sorry you're upset about the housing situation. Here's the thing though. Mom promised you a house she couldn't actually deliver. That's what happens when people make promises about things they don't own. Maybe this is a good opportunity for you to get a real job and start acting like an adult. He actually threatened to take me to court. Me. The guy who'd never held a job for more than 6 months was going to hire a lawyer to sue his sister. Good luck with that, Jake. I hope your lawyer accepts payment in iOS and good intentions, because that's about all you've got to offer. Today, almost 2 years later, Mom still lives in my house and writes me a rent check every month. The monthly payment is a constant reminder of exactly who the successful, responsible child turned out to be. More importantly, Mom has actually become a better person since learning what consequences feel like. She apologizes regularly for how she treated me growing up. She acknowledges that she was unfair and played favorites. She even started going to therapy to understand why she treated her children so differently. Last month, she told me she was proud of me for standing up for myself. She said Dad would be proud to dot Jake. He's working at a Target in Beaverton and living in a studio apartment that costs more per month than Mom pays me in rent. Turns out when you spend your entire life expecting handouts, the real world hits pretty hard. He's still bitter about the whole thing. He sends me nasty texts sometimes, calling me names and saying I stole his inheritance. But here's what he doesn't understand. I didn't steal anything. I just refused to be a victim of his and Mom's terrible decisions. The best part, every month when Mom writes that rent check, she has to make it out to Sarah Mitchell, property owner. It's a monthly reminder that the daughter she dismissed as too independent is now the person keeping a roof over her head. If you're dealing with family members who take you for granted or treat you like you don't matter, remember this story. Sometimes the best way to show people your worth is to show them what life looks like without you in it. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think about my mom's expensive lesson in consequences. Looking back, I'm actually grateful this whole thing happened. It showed me who my family really was, and it gave me the motivation I needed to stop seeking approval from people who were never going to give it. Sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is showing you exactly who they are. And sometimes the sweetest revenge is just letting people experience the natural consequences of their own choices. My mom learned that favoritism has a price. Jake learned that golden boy status doesn't pay the bills. And I learned that I'm stronger than I ever knew. Best investment I ever made.